Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tom Worth Jr. and today we're going to talk about Donald Trump, his calls for violence over the years, and how that directly pertains to America First, Nazi Germany, all sorts of wrong anti-American playbooks. And I had a wealth of material to choose from today, and I will focus in on some things. But obviously, you've probably heard about the shoplifters, the roughing up shoplifters, and that was something that he talked about over the weekend. If you somehow missed that, and God love you if you did, because that means you're staying out of the fray a little bit. But he was speaking to people, and he called for shoplifters to be roughed up by police. And as I do, I want to get the quote exactly right. This is from Vanity Fair. Donald Trump, unhinged sociopath, says police should violently assault Americans for, quote, 1 rough hour to stop shoplifting. This is by Bess Levin, September 30. Speaking at a rally in Pennsylvania, the ex-president said the key to preventing crimes like shoplifting, not murder, not shoplifting, is state-sanctioned police beatings, which he lamented the, quote, left does not allow. I would say the left does not allow police beatings. That's a fair accusation of the left. Quote, you see these guys walking out with air conditioners, with refrigerators on their back. The craziest thing, Trump said. And the police aren't allowed to do their job. They're told if you do anything, you're going to lose your pension. They're not allowed to do it because the liberal left won't let them do it. The liberal left wants to destroy them, and they want to destroy our country. Then he unveiled this big idea. If you had one really violent day, one rough hour, and I mean real rough, word would get out and it will end immediately. So your first impulse when you hear this is, mine is, Saturday Night Live started their 50th anniversary this weekend, which I still haven't seen yet, but is a Saturday Night Live skit. Go back to Dire Straits' Money for Nothing video in the 80s on MTV. You could just picture exactly how Trump describes. And all I can picture is this burly guy with the cigarette hanging out of his mouth just putting a refrigerator or an air conditioner on his back. And refrigerators and air conditioners that I've seen are pretty big. But put one on your back and walk out of the store with it. This is what Trump's actually describing. And I guess a whole bunch of police and security guards, according to Trump's description of the left, would not be allowed to do anything. They would have to just stand there and watch him walk out of the store slowly with the refrigerator and walk out and walk down the street shoplifting the refrigerator. And they couldn't do anything or else they'd lose their pension. I could just see them all sitting there. But that's funny, but that's not the horror of it. The horror of it is this America First book I'm reading, about a third of the way into it now. And in it, he's an historian. He has letters and journalistic accounts of things, and it's fact. It's what happened at the time. And before I get to that, I wanted to say that when I went to look up that quote from his thing on Friday, he wants to call for a really rough hour. Well, as so often happens, when I go look up something to get it right for a video, I will come across something that either I knew about and forgot about, or maybe all the details weren't out yet, or I just didn't remember at all happening. And I don't know if it's the time of year or not, but I came across something. This was at a MAGA rally, by the way, where he said this over the weekend. I came across from something like pretty much exactly a year ago, where he said if he wins, how he would urge law enforcement officers to handle shoplifters if he wins the White House in 2024. This is 1 year ago he said this. Um, Quote, we will immediately stop all of the pillaging and theft. Very simply, if you rob a store, you can fully expect to be shot as you are leaving that store. He said Friday during a speech to California Republicans. So that Friday would have been September 29th or 30th of last year. His comments drew applause from members of his party inside the Anaheim convention, and he loudly said shot again for emphasis. Mark Milley, that was one of his generals during his administration, one of the countless military professionals and national security professionals who have come out against him. For fun, I guess, Trump also threw in. This was days after he called for Army General Mark Milley, one of the top military officers in his administration, to be executed for what Trump described as treasonous phone calls to China, and Milley described as a routine part of his job. Execution, being shot, extrajudicial carrying out of things, and being roughed up, I mean really roughed up, for an hour, and that would end crime. This is what Donald Trump believes. Do you know who also believed that? The America Firsters, the isolationists, who were Nazi sympathizers, and the Nazis themselves enforced these tactics. This is what they did. They believed in extreme violence on the spot. Nobody could do anything about it, and that would whip everyone into shape real quick. So is it a coincidence? Let's think about this. That Trump embraces the actual America First name, as it was in the late 30s and early 40s, and that he employs the actual Hitler Nazi thug playbook. Is that a coincidence? Is this all just some big crazy, oh my gosh, I can't believe, what are the odds, right? No, it's not a coincidence. It's people studying this stuff and saying, hey, that worked in the 30s for Hitler, why can't it work here? So if you keep in mind Trump's calling for violence back on January 6th, the insurrectionists, the violent insurrection to try to overthrow the government, he called for that. He called for that violence repeatedly throughout his term. He never denounced violence. He always said there's good people on both sides. He always wanted you to also see the other side of the violent criminals. Why did that fail? Well, when Hitler came to power and had his brown shirts and they were burning down the government building there, when Hitler was first starting to come to power, Germany really didn't have a military rebuilt yet. They weren't allowed to fully arm and fully come up to standards as France and England and the Allies were. They were kept down. So there wasn't this big, powerful state military apparatus in Germany yet. So Hitler could just have a violent mob, which is what his brown shirts were, and shoot people and physically beat people to a pulp and burn things, and there was no one to stand up to them. And so people do quickly fall in line in that circumstance. And this is what Trump's people studied. They failed to account for the fact that the United States actually has a military sworn to uphold the Constitution. And I don't know if they counted on the support of that military or what, but they did keep it from being there in the first place. but that law and order was restored because we had police and military to do it. Unlike Germany in the 1930s, they couldn't stand up and resist this unforeseen, unchecked violence by Hitler's brown shirts. So that was a key difference why that failed. I wanted to also go into another thing where this is right out of the playbook of the isolationists. The Hoover Institution out in Stanford, they are not isolationists. They are for securing a safe world for democracy and for America's place in it. Because they know if you leave Russia unchecked, if you leave China unchecked, if you leave Iran unchecked, they have an axis right now. And when you say that, just let Vladimir Putin have Ukraine, it has nothing to do with us. Well, first of all, that gives Ukraine not just to Putin, but to Putin and China, because she is the one who is financially backing Putin here. So you're empowering China as well. You're enriching China as well if you just hand over all of Ukraine's resources and land to China and Putin. But if you think back to Putin annexing Crimea, just the quote Russian-speaking Crimea part of it, because hey, they're traditional ethnic Russians and they want us there, and then they expand that into eastern Ukraine, which is what they invaded, and then they wanted to invade Kiev itself and have been perpetually launching missiles and strikes against it for 2.5 years now. Well, you go back to 1938 Germany, when Germany just took over Austria, because Austria was German-speaking. And then they quickly took over the German-speaking part of Czechoslovakia, which is called the Sudetenland. That was just the German-speaking part of Czechoslovakia. Then they took over the rest of Czechoslovakia, and still nobody did anything in Europe. Nobody wanted war. They're terrified of war. World War I had just ended 20 years earlier. And hey, Hitler was promising I'm going to stop there. Just the German parts, right? Just the German-speaking parts. Just like Putin always says with Crimea, and then the rest, and then Eastern Ukraine, the Donbass, and then he had all the German parts. And then what did he do? He turned around and invaded Poland. Yeah, Germany from the west and Russia from the east, because they signed a non-aggression pact. Germany and Russia. Who has Russia signed a pact with? China. Do you want those two working together? Hey, why are people so brainless on this? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So the other part of the America First thing, where calling for violence, this is what I wanted to talk about with, hey, you just got to get real violent with them and they'll fall into line. There was this journalist who was a German journalist, and again, I'm getting that from this book here. Brand new book just came out. He was born in the 1890s in Prussia, or in the late 1800s in Prussia, came to the U.S., worked as a factory worker, went to the Columbia School of Journalism, which was new at the time, and came back to report in Germany, and he was there for Kristallnacht. He was there for the rise of Hitler and the Nazis, and chronicled it all as a journalist would. And he's talking about it. It's in 1935, 36. I have it right here. But it was the night where there was just unbridled, unleashed violence against Jewish shop owners across Germany, like all the cities. And it all happened in one night, just spontaneously. Obviously planned by the Nazis. And they broke all the windows of all the shops. They smashed in everything of all the Jewish shops. And there was a lot of Jewish shop owners in Germany. There's a lot of Jews in Germany at that time, before the Holocaust. And any German business, they just went and they smashed and they stole and they burned. And this went on all night until they ran out of targets. It only stopped when they ran out of stuff to smash and destroy. And it says, beginning systematically in the early morning hours in almost every town and city in the country, the wrecking, looting, and burning continued all day. Huge but mostly silent crowds looked on, and the police confined themselves to regulating traffic and making wholesale arrests of Jews, quote, for their own protection. This is from that journalist. The violence lasted many hours. Eventually, the Nazi minister of information, Joseph Goebbels, rationalized the violence, quote, the justified and understand. This is the part that completely, this is another Trump playbook thing when he says there's good people on both sides, and hey, I understand why they're doing what they're doing. You have to understand it too. This is what Joseph Goebbels said, the master architect of all of Hitler's darkest plans and actions. Quote, the justified and understandable anger of the German people over the cowardly Jewish murder of a German diplomat in Paris found extensive expression during last night, Goebbels declared. Quote, in numerous cities and towns of the Reich, retaliatory action has been undertaken against Jewish buildings and businesses. Then, and only then, just like Trump with the January 6th insurrectionists, Goebbels called off the thugs, which tells you they were under his control the whole time, just like the January 6th insurrectionists were with Trump. You can't call them off if they're this violent anarchic mob who is just out of control and you have nothing to do with. Why would they listen to you? Why? They wouldn't. So he called off the thugs even as he hinted at the government's next step. Quote, a strict request is issued to the entire population to cease immediately all further demonstrations and actions against Jewry, no matter what kind. A final answer to the Jewish assassination in Paris will be given to Jewry by way of legislation and ordinance. And we all know what that was. This is dark, dark stuff. It's funny. A guy lumbering out of a Best Buy with the giant 5-foot wide video screen Samsung fridge on his back. And the cops just have to sit there and watch him walk out. That's funny, right? There is a playbook here, and it is being followed perfectly. And anyone who will not see that, bring your comments, people. Tell me how I'm wrong. I don't see how I'm wrong. I just don't see it. It's all right there. It's right there. So just open your eyes. That's it. I'm not even going to talk about the vice presidential debate tonight. I don't really care. J.D. Vance is he'll say whatever he can remember Trump's team told him to say. Tim Walz is a great guy. I don't need to watch a debate tonight. I got better things to do than this vice presidential debate. I'm just not a big vice presidential debate fan. But this is the stuff that matters. And that's what I hope we remember 5 weeks from today. All right? We'll talk to you tomorrow.